The measure of intelligence is the ability to change. That's not a quote from me, but from Albert Einstein. Hopefully I get the shot right before cutting my hair for real. Let me ask you a question. How many cars do you think there are every 1,000 inhabitants in Europe and United States? Just make a guess. I'll give you about 10 seconds. Based on Eurostat, in 2022 there were 560 passenger vehicles in the European Union, while based on UNECE there were 774 passenger vehicles in the United States of America. That's more than 3 vehicles every 4 people. And together with cars, that small points moving fast behind me in the valley, there are airplanes, trains and ships. And all together they contribute to pollution and more precisely to the diffusion of more greenhouse gases. I'm pretty sure you already know greenhouse gases. They are the ones helping the atmosphere to capture more and more heat, and in doing so helping climate change and global warming. Let me just specify that in principle the greenhouse effect is not a problem by itself. On the contrary, it's one of the things that made life possible in the first place on the Earth. The problem is that now the human activity has amplified it too much, and it has become a problem. So let's go back 32 years for a moment. It's 1992, and 154 countries around the world have just decided to sign a treaty to contrast the interference of human activity with the climate system. The treaty is named United Nations Frameworks Convention on Climate Change, or UNFCCC. The main goal of the treaty is the following: stabilization of greenhouse gas concentration in the atmosphere at a level that will prevent dangerous anthropogenic interference with the climate system. So the problem was no more than 30 years ago. I don't know what are you thinking, but to me it is an incredibly huge amount of time. Maybe it's because I'm 26, or maybe it's just absurd to be so far behind in solving the problem after more than 30 years. At the same moment, the Secretariat of the treaty is established. Its name is the United Nations Climate Change, or UNCC. Before continuing the story, let me just say that there are some small but important concepts that I didn't know before preparing this video, and so I want to summarize them to be sure you can fully appreciate what I'm gonna say next. So usually greenhouse gases emission are expressed in kilotons of carbon dioxide equivalent. But what does it mean? Okay, first the easy one. A kiloton is 1 million of kilograms. Simple. But what does carbon dioxide equivalent mean? Essentially, the impact on global warming of other gases is compared with the one of carbon dioxide. Okay, so the carbon dioxide equivalence expresses the amount of carbon dioxide needed to replicate the effect on global warming of the gas we are considering. So, for example, methane traps 28 times more heat than carbon dioxide. So 1 kilogram of methane is converted in 28 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent. Reasoning in this way is very simple because it allows us to add up the impact of different greenhouse gases, make it easier to compare and track the emissions, and so their effect on the climate. So the UNCC makes available the data for greenhouse gases emission for a lot of sectors, including the transportation one. Currently, while I'm recording this video, the most updated data are about 2021. So where are we 29 years after the United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change? So this is the amount of carbon dioxide equivalent produced by the transportation sector for each area of interest in 2021. This is the less interesting plot I'm gonna show you today because there are many factors influencing the absolute value, and one of the first is the population. Needless to say that typically bigger the population, greater the emissions produced. Nevertheless, this doesn't explain why there is a so big difference between the European Union and the United States of America. This is partially explained from, if you remember, what we said at the start of the video. The number of passenger vehicles in the United States is bigger than the same number in the European Union. But this is only one of the many factors contributing to the result you are seeing now. As you probably already understand, when doing a data analysis, there are so many factors we don't have control over that can influence our analysis. So let's use a typical data science technique called normalization to try to isolate us from these many confounding factors. Probably it's still not clear to you what we are really trying to measure, but don't worry, we are getting there. So for example, we may be interested in the trends because, for example, we want to answer questions like which are the countries that more are trying to contrast climate change and which the ones that are trying less. The normalization we are going to perform is very simple. So we say that the treaty was signed in 1992. We are simply checking the transportation emission of each country in each year with respect to the same value in 1992. In this way, for example, the United States and the European Union became comparable because we are not checking anymore the absolute values. So as you can see, their normalized time series are very alike. For example, there is a first fall starting in 2008, probably due to the big financial crisis. And then there is another fast one in 2020, almost surely due to COVID. And if you check, it's, let's say, ironic how not even a pandemic was able to restore the value to the ones of 1992.
We're screwed.
This one instead is the graph about Italy in orange and the United Kingdom in green. And when I first saw it, I was like, oh good, there is a decrease in the value, so it's good. Then I thought again about population. Let me just specify that this decrease must not be undervalued. It's a good starting point, but there is a but. The United States increased their population by 80 million from 1992, while Italy and the United Kingdom almost kept it unchanged. So to close this section, I want to show you the plot about Turkey in purple and Poland in red. As you can see, the growth of their greenhouse gases emission doesn't seem will stop soon. I'll leave to you in the description the link to the Medium article about this analysis, and there you can find the interactive version of the plot with all the countries tracked by the analysis. So this led me to another question. So the website states that the Climate Action Tracker is an independent scientific project that tracks government climate action and measures it against the globally agreed Paris Agreement, which, if you don't remember, aims to holding warming well below 2 degrees Celsius and pursuing efforts to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. So the homepage provides the estimate for the greater part of the countries in the world, and we can see that not a single state is compatible with the Paris Agreement. Only 5 countries have an almost sufficient level, which are Ethiopia, Nigeria, Morocco, Norway, and Nepal. Then we find as critically insufficient Argentina, Mexico, Russian Federation, Thailand, Indonesia, Turkey, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Vietnam. Highly insufficient are Canada, China, Egypt, and New Zealand, and all the others, including almost all European countries and the United States of America, are in the insufficient group. Okay, that was 2021, but where are we now in 2024? To answer that question, we can consult the State of European Transport, which is a report issued annually. Transport has just gained the highest absolute value in the leaderboard of greenhouse gases emission by sector, as you can see here. And quoting from the report, in 2022, transport represented 29% of all European Union emissions, almost double its 17% share in 1990. But while non-transport emissions have decreased 38% since that year, transport emissions have grown by a quarter. This makes the challenge of decarbonizing the sector more challenging and more urgent. What is even more incredible is that the transportation sector is expected to account for 44% of the impact in 6 years. I repeat, in 6 years, our travels and shipments will generate half of the greenhouse gases emission we produce. At this point, I was just trying to find a glimmer of hope in the report. So I asked myself what electric vehicles are doing for the problem. Sadly, in 2022, battery electric vehicles were representing only 1.2% of the European Union fleet. In fact, in 2023, 15% of the new car sales were about electric cars. But sadly, it seems the growth is slowing down. The point is, while being part of the solution, electric vehicles can't represent the totality of it. Also because the transition to electric vehicles requires a lot of energy, and it doesn't really make sense if you need to burn carbon to produce electricity needed to move your cars. Furthermore, prices are decreasing, but electric cars are still relatively expensive and present smaller ranges. Furthermore, we know how difficult it is for us, for people, to change their habits. Incentives from the governments are essential. So, why would we want to save the planet? Because we are the idiots who live in it. Thank you, Peter Quill, for that gem of wisdom. Actually, he was talking about the galaxy, but you get the point. Sadly, it's in human nature to postpone thinking about a problem until a disaster happens. But disasters are happening everywhere, even here in Italy. We had some floods.
Ma quella è impostata?
Sì, andare a destra fra poco. I know you can think there is nothing impactful you can do, But I have chosen to analyze the transportation sector exactly because it's where we can have a direct impact. And I also know it can seem meaningless if compared to deforestation, exploitation, and Taylor Swift taking a plane to travel 50 kilometers. Me too, I'm doing nothing but a YouTube video, which surely won't solve the problem. But talking about the problem is so damn important. Because if we don't talk, no one will take actions. Thank you.